All right. All right, so welcome everybody. Welcome to our August garden talk. Judith today will be talking to us about the Monarch butterfly truck and their amazing migration. So Judith, take it away.
Okay. Hello. And those of you who are with us in person can see that I am wearing my butterfly wings. My daughter has said that I've made gift purchasing very easy because the kids will say, look, Mom, it's got a butterfly. Nana will love it. So there we go. And I get to play Halloween every time I talk about butterflies. So I'm kind of stoked. Okay, just a personal preference is that I rarely use the word amazing. I think it's truly overused, but in the case of the monarch butterfly, it's very apropos. I want to be very clear. I am not a scientist. I am not an entomologist. I have no formal training. And I am an enthusiast. I am not a breeder of butterflies because breeding is actually highly regulated by the US Department of Agriculture. And I'm sure that you've seen businesses that offer butterflies that they will ship to you. You can release them on various occasions. And those are highly regulated because a breeder cannot ship certain butterflies to certain places because they would be considered agricultural pests. And the same is true for some of the butterfly raising kits. Example, the cabbage white, which is one of the butterflies we see most often. We see it all season long, early spring all the way through fall. They feed on certain plants in the agricultural sphere. So they can be considered pests. And even though I know last time I was looking at some butterfly kits, cabbage whites were one of the option, but it said may not be released. And of course, if you're raising butterflies in a classroom with little kids, they want to release them. So anyway, it's all highly regulated. And as I said, you can only ship certain butterflies to certain places. So my first experience with this whole realm of Lepidoptera came in September of 2012 when I was living in Williamsburg, Virginia. And I went to the Norfolk Botanical Garden where they were doing a monarch tag and release. I held a butterfly and I've been hooked ever since. It truly was magical. I let all the kids go first. And I hung back and I said, if there are any left, can I do one, please? I get goosebumps thinking about that first time. And it is a miracle to me, this whole process of metamorphosis. So I went with a girlfriend and we named our buddy Diego. I don't know why, that was the name she came up with. And it actually had tag number RCZ177. And I'll talk a little bit about that process of monarch tagging. Just real quickly, we have a nice little crowd here. Just raise your hand if you have milkweed in your garden. Okay, yay.
You have what? Milkweed?
Milkweed in your garden. Okay. And so we have some monarch enthusiasts, people who know you gotta have milkweed for those babies. Alrighty. Going to give you a quick overview of the Lepidoptera, which is the family of insects that includes butterflies and moths. In the world, worldwide, there are way more moths than species of butterflies. And then there's kind of a subset of butterflies called skippers, and I'll talk a little bit about them. In North America, we have about 12,000 moth species, 825 identified species of butterflies. And remember, we are always learning. So sometimes those numbers will go up, or in the case of extinction, which has happened, the numbers may go down. And skippers again, fewer skippers. And here in New York, 400 species of identified moths, and 62 distinct species of butterflies, but that doesn't include skippers. I couldn't find a solid number on that. So generally speaking, here are the differences between butterflies, moths, and skippers. You're going to see butterflies during the day. They have antennae that are long, usually quite long. They're smooth, and sometimes they have a little club at the end, a little hook or a little knob. And it forms a chrysalis to pupate. Pupate is the process when the caterpillar goes through metamorphosis and becomes a butterfly, forms a chrysalis. Skippers are also daytime little flyers. They have smooth club antenna. It forms a chrysalis to pupate, but boy, they look a lot like a moth. And they're super, super darty in flight. You know how some butterflies float in your garden. The big ones usually float. The little ones are like, you know, they're on crack. Yeah, I know. And skippers are very darty little guys. They will nectar. In other words, they are feeding on the nectar in a flower, and their wings will be up, and they kind of look like delta wings. Moths are normally nocturnal. There's an asterisk there. I'll talk about that briefly. But their antennae are usually like feather dusters, feathers. And it pupates within a cocoon. Butterflies, eclose, you'll notice that word is in quotation marks. That's simply the French word for emerge. We butterfly enthusiasts like to be la-di-da, and we say the butterfly has eclosed. It's just a thing. They emerge from a chrysalis. Moths emerge from a cocoon. There is no such thing as a butterfly cocoon. A butterfly does not emerge from a cocoon. And this mistake is made by people time and time and time again. And a friend of mine said, you know, I think I know where that mistake comes from. Apparently, it's been a long time since I read the book, The Hungry, Hungry Caterpillar, which also gets it wrong because it says the caterpillar eats everything. That's not true either. Caterpillars are specialists. They usually eat a specific set of plants. So just remember that. No such thing as a butterfly cocoon. That asterisk about moths being nocturnal, I'm hoping that you have had the experience of seeing a clearwing moth. Sometimes people think they're really tiny little hummingbirds, or they think they're really big bumblebees. It is a diurnal, a daytime moth, and its host plants are the snowberry bush, honeysuckle, native honeysuckle, it's got to be the native, and dogmayne, which is unfortunately considered a weed. It's not a terribly pretty plant. It's part of the milkweed family, the Asclepias family, but the monarch does not use it as a host plant. But they are the coolest little guys. I love those guys. Here in North America, our largest moth, and you may have met, you will rarely see these because they come out at night. Their caterpillars are up high in the treetops. Those are its host plants. And I was lucky enough to find a cocoon when I was clearing out brush from my garden. And that is the size of the Cecropia moth. That is my hand in that photograph. It was a really interesting time trying to take the photograph because I was using a real camera, not just my phone. Wingspan is about 5, sometimes 6 inches. It's the largest moth in North America. Oh, I'm sorry, this is a slightly duplicated slide, my apologies. So just a little bit about insects, about Lepidoptera. Insect blood is called hemolymph. It's similar to blood, but there are no veins in insects. Instead, this liquid circulates throughout. It kind of flows through the body, taking nutrients and removing waste. And caterpillar poop has its own word. So you can learn this and you can, it's just like being in Virginia when somebody says, isn't it special? So I have had enough of this grass. And you can use it in polite company and get away with it.
He's a mess.
The feeding tube by which butterflies and moths obtain their nectar is called a proboscis. But interestingly enough, some moths, especially some of the larger silkworm moths, do not even feed. They don't even have that mouth part. They do not feed. Their sole purpose after they emerge from their cocoon is to mate, lay eggs, and then they die. It's a short life, but that's their cycle. So if they do feed, they are feeding through a proboscis. So let's get down to the monarch. And I have a friend who is so good at pronouncing the Latin names. I mean, it just rolls off of her tongue. And I really struggle. So the closest I can come to this is Denos flexipus. The monarch butterfly is one of the butterflies where you can distinctly tell male from female. And the distinctions are that the female overall is going to be larger than the male. It has heavier markings. Those are not veins. Those black marks, they're simply markings. They're not veins. Nothing flows through them. It's just the way the scaling, all those butterfly scales, just the pattern of it. But those markings will be heavier than on the male, and the male will have two little dots on its hind wings. Those are pheromone sacs. So the monarch life cycle is a year-long process. And there are 4 generations during the year, and actually sometimes 5, depending on weather conditions. But let's go with 4 because that's kind of the norm. The butterflies start in Mexico. They fly all the way up through North America. They get as far as Canada, then they turn around, they go back to Mexico, and they're following the emergence of milkweed, which is their host plant. But the interesting thing is, and we know this, it's not the same butterfly that goes to Mexico as the one that left. It's the great-grandchild of that butterfly. 4 generations. Wait a minute. Great. I'm getting my greats. Yes. We're all counting on our fingers. But within each of those generations, there's going to be the ova stage, the egg, and it's usually an egg for 4 to 5 days before it hatches into the larva, the caterpillar. It will remain a caterpillar for about 10 to 14 days, depending on food supply and weather conditions. The warmer it is, the faster everything moves a little bit. And then the imago is the scientific name for the adult butterfly. And they will live 2 to 6 weeks or 5 to 7 months if they are part of, quote, the super generation that overwinters in Mexico. Sorry, I made a inadvertent touch on the remote. So the lifespan, generation 1 are the eggs that are laid in the early spring by the adults that overwintered in Mexico. So that all happened January, February, and March. Down in the Texas Panhandle, all along the coast of the Gulf of Mexico. and then up into areas where it warmed up. So generation one, those adults live 2 to 6 weeks. They're continuing to move north through the continent. And they're laying their eggs approximately April and May, but they can go all the way through June and July. Again, weather conditions, milkweed abundance, all of these things. And it's not like a train schedule. It's not like, okay, it's May 1st, everybody on board. It's always a rolling process. And there's lots of overlap. Those adults also live 2 to 6 weeks. The third generation, and this is what we're seeing mostly up here now, this is August 6th. The eggs are being laid by the third generation. Those adults will live 2 to 6 weeks, but one of the ladies here said that she has noticed some really big monarchs. They are likely Gen 4. Part of the super gen. Again, it's not an exact timetable, it's a rolling process. But the super generation is the one, this is the butterfly that's actually going to fly to Mexico. And they go up into the mountains near a place called Michoacan, and they go up to the Oyumel fir tree. That is the only place they go. The Oyumel fir tree. Stands of it are up in the mountains. Gen 4 butterflies are physically larger, they're heavier, wingspan is greater than generation 1, 2, and 3. And part of that is that they need that extra heft, they need that extra wing surface to make that long migration flight. And their body needs to be bigger so that it can consume more energy and store more energy during that flight process. Once they get up into Mexico, they go into what's called reproductive diapause. They do not mate until the following spring, when they mate, when the milkweed starts coming out in those southern regions. So that's Gen 4. Here's a map generally showing the process, the flight patterns in the spring. And you'll notice that west of the Rockies, there is a distinct population of a different monarch. Same species. I imagine that the DNA might be slightly different, but basically the mountains prevent that barrier, that continental divide. So there's the eastern population and the western population. And then the process is reversed in the fall. The California population hangs out around Monterey, San Francisco, in those southern areas. Not too warm. They don't go to the real warm places like LA. They stay where it's slightly cooler. All right. So this biosphere of Michoacan is just west of Mexico City. I'm not sure what the elevation is, but it's a pretty high elevation. So what do monarchs need? By the way, anything that you do for monarchs is basically going to be good for butterflies in general. And whatever you do for butterflies in general is good for insects in general, which is good for everything, including birds, because baby birds need to be eating grubs and slugs and caterpillars. Baby birds cannot digest seed. So when you see that mother and father bird going back and forth to the nest, they've got little squishy, gooey things. Now, normally, birds leave the monarch caterpillars alone because they have evolved to know these are not going to taste good. They can identify them by their markings, and maybe if they do try one, they learn very quickly this does not taste good. And it does not taste good because the caterpillar has consumed milkweed, which has a latex, which has a toxic taste to birds. So all season long, butterflies, especially the monarch, they need nectar-rich flowers. Think of it like the juice bar, where they go and they get their energy from the nectar. Here are some really, really great nectar flowers. Most of them that are listed here are native plants. And I want to say something about things like zinnias, which is not a native, but they're so easy to grow. They're full of nectar. But whenever you're trying to buy a plant for a pollinator, get the old-fashioned one. You know how marigolds and zinnias have turned into pom-poms? You know, they snowball, and it's big, and it's bright, and it's beautiful, and the butterfly cannot get its proboscis down to where the nectar is. So look for the old-fashioned flower that just opens itself up to the sun. It provides a landing pad for the butterfly to go ahead and dip its proboscis into the nectar-rich center. Little something is that the bigger the butterfly, the larger the flower it can work with. Little butterflies need little flowers. Lantana is a really nice flower. It's not a native, but I love that flower. It is very, very good for small butterflies. Clover, you may see little butterflies on clover. And actually, there are species that use clover as their host plant. I'll take a real quick sip of water here. So monarchs specifically need milkweed. That is the nursery, the neonatal or the prenatal place where the eggs are laid. And that's where the caterpillars hang out. They do nothing but eat until they get big enough to go into pupa stage. There are over 100 species of Asclepias. 3 of them are New York natives. The common milkweed, this is the one that gets quite tall. It has a very fragrant white blossom. It develops those large pods, and it will grow in the darndest places, whether you want it to or not, usually. Sometimes it takes a while for those seeds to actually germinate. So if you planted milkweed seeds and you go, gee, nothing came up, there are a couple of possibilities. They might come up next year. Or those seeds are big enough that squirrels and chipmunks, especially chipmunks, may have redistributed them for you. So you may find it in some odd places. Asclepias incarnata is a more compact milkweed. It's usually shorter. It doesn't spread quite as much. So it's a little bit more well-behaved in your garden. And butterfly milkweed is the Asclepias tuberosa. All 3 of those are natives. Well, what about the other 100 species? They're not necessarily going to grow well here. What grows in Texas has a very different climate need than what we grow here. So if you see a butterfly and it's floating around, by the way, the entire body of a butterfly is full of sensory organs. Butterflies will fly around and they'll land on a plant. And then they might or might not. Actually, I don't have bosses. They might imagine my drinking straw. If they don't nectar and instead they flit off to another one, what they're using is their feet to determine if this is a host plant. They taste with their feet. Their whole body can sense all sorts of different things like we experience sound. They just work differently than we do, but imagine their whole body being a set of sensors. But their feet especially are what they use to determine if this is a good plant. Can I lay my eggs here? Some species will lay one egg, and that's what the monarch does, and then fly off to another leaf or another plant. Other species will lay their eggs in a cluster, sometimes on the top of the leaf, sometimes on the bottom, sometimes even on the stem. But the monarch will lay its eggs on the underside, so when you see it flitting and flitting, and if you know you've got milkweed, just keep watching. Eventually, the female is going to grab on with her little hook-like feet, and she's going to curl her whole body like she's doing a crunch, and she's going to deposit an egg. And then she's going to fly off. That is the size of an egg. It is a small pinhead size, but it's white on green, so it's pretty easy to see. If your eyesight is not what it was when you were younger, take a little magnifying glass out with yourself. But they're pretty easy to spot. By the way, does anyone grow dill, fennel, rue, carrots? Have you ever noticed little caterpillars on those plants? Or little white dots? Well, if you do, they are not like parsley bugs or parsley worms. They're actually going to be black swallowtail butterflies. And call me, I will come and rescue them. I will foster them. Harry, okay, so that's a monarch egg. And I used to have a place where I could do this. So this is a monarch egg hatching under the microscope. Let's make sure this is going to work. I have to start it here. There we go. I did this several years ago. So it took 4 days for the egg to hatch. My very scientific setup. That's at 30 times magnification. And they're just so incredibly detailed. Now, anyone who has given birth, you can kind of relate to what's going on here. It's like labor. The caterpillar is eating its way out of the shell, kind of like a baby bird pecking its way out. But it's actually consuming the shell because it's full of nutrients. Nature at its best does not waste. It's its first meal. It's coming. It's coming. Any minute now. And look at the size of what comes out of that.
Oh my goodness.
I know. That's why I say anybody who's given birth can relate. It's like, okay. I know. I mean, it's astonishing.
Wow.
The caterpillar, just briefly, has certain parts. The mandibles, the jaws, that's how it eats. They have very, very simple eyes. So they don't really see things. They don't breathe air the way we do. They don't have any lungs, but they have spiracles, kind of like pores. And that's how they get their air. They only, even though there are all of these little appendages, caterpillars are insects, so they only have 6 legs. I keep forgetting that this does not work on a screen. The thoracic legs, those are the actual legs. And then the back ones are prolegs that are not true legs, but they're kind of like they have little suction cups. And that's how it helps stay on the bottom of the leaf, on the stem, or whatever. And so the head, the thorax, the abdomen, basic insect parts. So monarch caterpillars go through 5 instars. Instar is just a fancy insect word for stage or phase. They are going to outgrow and shed their skin 4 times before they pupate. So that is about somewhere between a 1/16 and an 1/8 of an inch long. That is a first instar caterpillar. And they already have the stripes and the markings, but they're usually much paler than the later instars. Excuse me. Caterpillar has basically two jobs. Well, three. It eats, it grows, and it poops. What's happening here is that this caterpillar has just those other little black mark or dark marks, that's frass. But that pile right under one end of it, that is the old skin. When the caterpillar has grown out of its skin, it's going to kind of crawl away. And it can crawl on a vertical surface, it can crawl somewhere completely unrelated. And it just kind of hangs out there, sometimes about 10 to 12 hours, while it's getting ready to shed its skin. And then it basically just walks out of its old skin. And usually it turns around and eats the old skin because it's full of protein. So these are late stage caterpillars. And this was a lot of these photographs I took before I knew about the difference between native milkweed and non-native milkweed. So some of the photographs are taken on tropical milkweed. I do not recommend using it. I do not recommend growing it, but at the time I did not know better. Okay, brass. When the monarch caterpillar gets to be about 1.5 inches, sometimes as big as 2 inches, it's in its last instar, 5th instar of caterpillar, done. And then they go on walkabout. They are walking away from their food source. They're looking for a safe place to pupate, because when they pupate, they are extremely vulnerable to predators because they become immobile. They're also clearing out their digestive tract because they cannot go through metamorphosis with undigested food in their system. So they're doing little poops along the way. And it's amazing. You would think, oh, how fast can a caterpillar move? Actually, they can make tracks.
Can I say something?
Yes.
We had monarch butterfly caterpillars in my classroom, and the screen got loose, and we lost a caterpillar. And we looked and looked and looked and looked, and it was on this side of the room was the jar, and it was underneath the chalk tray.
Yes.
Underneath the chalk tray. Yes, it turned into it became a chrysalis.
It was
I was like, okay, we're not gonna touch them. They're not going to
Fence around it.
exactly. It was doing what it instinctively needed to do. And I used to find them on my porch, under the railing, under the step, under the porch furniture. And you know how your siding on your house has that little, step? I would find them all along there. Yeah, they're just little devious things, but they go on their walkabout. And they're looking for a place. This was on some, I think some gladiola plants that I had in the garden. And I was just lucky enough. Now, what the caterpillar does is it spins silk from its mouth and it creates a little button of silk. So it's doing this, do, and then it turns around and it kind of sticks its behind on that silk button. And then it slowly, it's kind of like doing a cantilever back bend. It will drop down into this J position. And it will remain in J for about 24 hours. And what is happening in here is that all of the little butterfly or caterpillar cells are turning into butterfly soup. Some of the cells are what's called distal cells, and they have the memory. They're like stem cells in the human body. They have the memory to become the legs, the proboscis, the wings, all parts that a butterfly is going to be. But I had the situation where I accidentally dropped a caterpillar in J. It just got knocked off the table in its container, and it just turned into green soup. It was very sad. I cried. When it first, and what it's doing, it sheds its skin one last time. And it takes a while, takes a few hours to turn into the typical shape that we recognize as the monarch chrysalis. So a pupation sequence. Now I have raised butterflies. I'll talk a little bit about raising them. This is a series that I took because I had a contained, controlled situation where I was able to photograph them. One more. Okay. So I had my camera set up on a tripod, and I started taking pictures about 10:15 in the morning, and the sequence ended like 6 hours later. But the pupation actually only took like 6 minutes when it actually did that transformation of shedding its skin. So here we go. Well, all right. So as I said, this was a controlled situation. As it's hanging in its J, you can actually see it. It's like doing crunches, curling up and down. And what's happening is it's kind of like, have you ever gotten your zipper stuck on your winter jacket and you're trying to get yourself out? That's kind of what's happening. The skin is splitting, and this is where the chrysalis is forming. This is its last skin that will harden into that chrysalis. And it has a very different shape than what we expect to see of a chrysalis. And there it is. Okay. A monarch emerging from chrysalis. I haven't had the chance to re-photograph this, but I'm going to say you're going to see some lighting changes, and that's because I was doing this outside and there were clouds going past. There we go. Okay. So I happen to have two chrysalises that came out at the same time. And I actually did this in video. This took 17 minutes. I've got this sped up. They emerge head side down. Watch the proboscis. It actually comes out in two parts, and it's like zipping it together, zipping it together. You'll see its abdomen is pulsating. It's pumping its fluids into the wings. And that process, this whole process took about 17 minutes or something like that. But it will hang there while its wings harden and dry. So it's very vulnerable at this point. So that's why they crawl away to hidden places. They really like to go inside of bushes where you can't see them. Watching this never gets old. I've had people come and, who are friends. I've said, hey, I know they're gonna emerge this morning. Come on over. And it never gets old for me. All right, so let's go to the next one. Did I see a question? Did you have your hand up? Oh, okay. We're just stretching. Okay. So over the years, I've done a variety of different methods of trying to raise monarchs. And to be clear, remember I said I'm not a butterfly breeder. I only would protect what came to my yard naturally. So the first year I took my little milkweed and I poked it into little containers with water. And it was really interesting because all the cats would wander off. The next year I tried something. I had gone to a place called Butterfly World in Florida, which is an amazing place to visit. And because they have lots and lots of butterflies that are from foreign lands, they are not native species. So they have these exotic species. They have it, everything is controlled, contained. They can't let those butterflies go ever. Number one, they wouldn't survive, but there might be pests in there. When you first walk into this huge complex, one of the things you see, in addition to, of course, the gift shop, is a laboratory, a science lab. And there were these workers in lab coats, and they had, the really nice containers, plastic containers that have the screw tops. Okay, that's what they had all of their caterpillars in. And I said, I've been saving Trader Joe yogurt cups because back in the day, long ago, Trader Joe's Greek yogurt came with a not only foil but a lid. And being an old Girl Scout leader, I can't throw anything away. I can make use of that. I'm sure I can use it for something. So I had all of these yogurt cups, and it was like, wow, I can do that. So I poked holes in all of them, and I probably had about 400 cups over the years, and which was great because then I could sanitize the cups between. Because you have to clean it. If you're going to do this, you have to clean it every day. Otherwise, they are in their frass. We would not want to be sitting in our poop. Okay, we don't want the butterflies sitting in their poop. So yeah, I was the crazy cat lady. Caterpillars taking on, hundreds of babies. Okay, so that was my second year. Third year, I tried another method, which was to actually put the containers with milkweed inside large butterfly enclosures. And then I morphed into a combination of stuff. And at one point, I had not only put monarchs, but I also had black swallowtails. I was going, I had so many black swallowtails, I ran out of my own parsley. I was going to the store like every 3 days and buying 4 bunches of organic parsley. Thank you very much. Yeah, I was a little insane. So when I had the chrysalises in these controlled situations, I was able to take the chrysalis and that silk button, if you spray water on it, you can kind of remove the silk from whatever it has adhered to. And I would wrap it around a pin and then put it in my container. I simplified the whole process over the years. Instead of each one having its tag, I made it simpler and I just kind of did by date. But I would keep track of males, females, how many emerged, how long it took. And I want to say this very carefully, is that there is a lot of discussion about, is this helping or harming? But what I will say is in terms of education, it was fabulous. When I would go visit my grandkids, I would take my babies with me along with a supply of milkweed, and the kids would help me clean the containers. And then I would be able to take that yogurt cup and put it on top of a glass. And the first time, Tegan, the twin, I was pointing out, okay, watch where the bat where the green started to emerge when the skin split. And I said to this, watch. And she said, oh, that's disgusting. And I said, no, actually, it's very magical. So the next day, her mom, my daughter, was able to come down and join us. And lo and behold, I hear Tegan, now, Mom, watch the back where it's going to start to split. But you might think it's disgusting, but it's not. It's really magical. So as they say, watch your words with children. They come back to you. So the neat thing about monarchs is they are, I think of butterflies like the Las Vegas showgirls of the insect world. We see them in the daytime. They're usually bright. They're usually pretty. We're automatically attracted to them. We don't usually see the moths because we're sleeping and they're somewhere else. But what's happening with the monarch over the years, there was the concern about their habitat being lost and problems. And the numbers vary from year to year. But yes, it is true that over the past 25 to 30 years, the supply of milkweed has dwindled because of what farmers use to make their crops more productive. And I talked a little bit about the controversy over raising any butterfly, but especially the monarch. I'm not even going to try and pronounce the Latin of that. We call it OE because nobody can pronounce it. But it is a parasite that infects the monarch butterfly and the queen butterfly, which is very similar to the monarch. It's a protozoan, it's a parasite. And if a monarch is infected with it and it lays an egg on a plant, that egg is parasitized. The parasite spreads through contact, and it is a real problem. It shortens lifespan. It can result in deformed butterflies. And that is a problem. So I have stopped raising them in enclosures. I simply try to protect what comes to my garden. It's a challenge though, because everything has to eat. I found some eggs early about 3 weeks ago and went back the next day and they were gone because we have snails all over the place. Snail comes along and says, eggs for breakfast. Spiders, other insects will eat the eggs. So that's a caution. If you're going to raise any type of insect, you have to be very, very careful about the OE. There is an entire scientific organization that specifically monitors the OE. Tagging information. It's fascinating to tag butterflies, and I'm sure there are all kinds of things. This is one of the ways that we know that butterflies from Canada end up in Mexico, because they tag the butterflies in the fall. And now if you find a tagged butterfly, chances are you're finding it when it's dead. It may not have survived, but that's not always the case. There have been situations where a butterfly that started in Canada was found alive in Mexico or somewhere along the line. If you do the tagging and you register all of your numbers with monarch.org, you get like a certificate if your tag's been found. Never happened to me. But tagging is really very, very cool. And yes, you can handle butterflies very carefully. People say, won't the scales fall off? Well, you don't rub them. But when the butterfly has, my arms won't go back. But when their wings are together in back of them, you can very carefully grasp the butterfly and then put your finger underneath its head. And it will generally start crawling. It will loosen whatever it's holding on to. It will loosen its feet and crawl up on your finger, and then you can hold it, obviously carefully. The tags are very tiny, they're very thin, very lightweight, and now, this is really cool. They're actually using teeny tiny micro transponders
Wow.
and using GPS. So yeah, I mean, they're always learning about stuff. The little handout that I gave you has that QR code. These are some resources. The list that I have available through that QR code goes into a lot of detail about plants. Whoops, wait a minute, what happened here? Ah, wait a minute, let me get back to where I want to be here. This is when I wish that I had my, there we go. Slideshow. This slide. All right. I am open to questions.
All right, before we get into questions, I'm just gonna thank Judith, because I just wanna stop the recording here. Thank you, Judith.
My pleasure,
All
truly.
right, just give me a